Hey, I'm Daniel, and on this episode of my podcast, The Filmcraziest Show, I spoke with Tim Orr, the cinematographer on the Apple TV original series Dickinson. The show stars Hailee Steinfeld as Emily Dickinson as we learn about her life in Amherst, Massachusetts in the 1850s. Tim's work as a cinematographer helps bring the world to life, and I learned more about his process in this conversation as we spoke about the second season of Dickinson. So let's get right into the interview. I was curious, just how did you develop the visual look of the show, and were there any major differences from the first season to the second season that like audience members might not notice?
Well, as far as developing the look, I worked with longtime collaborator David Gordon Green, who directed the pilot, the first two episodes, and we set out to try to make a show that was beautiful and period appropriate in terms of like fitting into a certain realism and naturalism of the period. But also make it fun, and stretch that just a little bit, especially like at times with camera, in terms of, there's a lot of stuff that's just kind of like elegant and composed, but there's also stuff that can kind of get a little crazy. So we wanted to put ourselves in a place to where we could kind of bounce between kind of two different realms visually and still have it all make sense. When you were starting out working with beautiful sets and beautiful costumes, you're already set up in a place to where you've got a good start, right? And certainly the collaborators I've had on this show have just done, all of them have done excellent work. My goal was to just make like a beautiful show, and it hasn't really changed, I don't think, from the first and second seasons in terms of like the overall style and look. One thing that was kind of added, of course, in the second season, we added a new set, Austin and Sue's Evergreens, which that has thrown a lot of parties and everything, and that was certainly been a lovely space to work in, and that kind of allowed to kind of stretch the storytelling a bit in terms of use of kind of movement within the spaces, because we were kind of we had a little bit more room to work with, and it's just been really rewarding.
Are those parties fun to film, or are they kind of hectic with all those people?
They are usually, a lot of the times when you're doing crowd, like, whether it be parties or, where it's a room full of people, it can be difficult because it's just like, there's more space to light, more people to light, less room to work with camera. So it certainly requires a lot more choreography. And kind of planning within, like the different pockets of the scene, and strategizing how to make best use of the space, and to make it as efficient as possible so you can kind of get your work done. So it certainly makes it, it's a lot more difficult and hectic than, like, say, a two-hander, but that's part of what makes it cool too.
On set, have you ever had to like make yourself feel like really small just to try to like not go anywhere near the scene? Or
No, not really. Like I have like a working, like usually the way I work, it's I will, of course, I get to light a set usually with just stand-ins. So obviously, say it's a crowded scene, of course we're only dealing with, like, say, maybe 4 or 5 people at a time that I would actually be like lighting in a setup. So for me, it's like I just try to keep things as kind of like calm and quiet as possible during the setup time. And then hopefully once we bring everyone in, and it gets a little more chaotic, I can just sit and watch and hopefully enjoy what we've created.
Cool. Now you're talking a lot about lighting. I didn't realize that the cinematographer would be so involved with like other departments, like the lighting department and such.
Well, to me, it's like the cinematography. It's like that's the chief. That's the number one thing a cinematographer does, in my opinion.
Okay.
Is the lighting. Of course, it's kind of setting up shots in terms of like designing them with a director, deciding what's the best place, where's the best place to put a camera, um, how are we going to move it if we are, so all of that stuff goes into play. Of course, choice of lenses, framing, composition. But the thing I enjoy the most about cinematography is lighting by far. And that's just what makes me happy.
Neat. Now, do you go in with a storyboard or do you just have it in your mind's eye?
I usually just have everything in my mind's eye, but there are certain sequences that definitely require storyboards. For instance, this past season we had a couple of ventures outside our world of the homestead and Evergreens. We went, we had a night at the opera, and we had a spa day, and especially with the opera, that one really required storyboards for most all of the entire episode, just because we were dealing with a space. We shot that in an old theater in New Jersey, and it was this production designer built a stage inside the lobby, so we actually shot inside this grand lobby and kind of made it into this opera house, but it really required a lot of careful planning to kind of pull off what we did, so those sequences definitely are storyboarded, but otherwise a lot of the time we just kind of bring the actors in, block the scene, see what happens, and then there are times you just develop a plan from there.
Okay. Now, like you talk about the opera scene and like how challenging that was. Like, would you say that was like one of your boldest like sequences on this second season, or was that
Yeah,
would
I think
that be
so.
something
I
else?
mean, for sure. I think this is another great thing about filmmaking, is when all the different departments come together, in terms of the art direction, production design, art direction, putting a set, having the vision to put this set inside an old theater lobby, and and along with the costumes in terms of like designing this, telling the story of kind of not only an opera but like the family's night at the opera. My part kind of comes into where it's like how to figure out how to work in a space that's kind of like a two-story venue, in terms of like the opera boxes were like 30 feet off the floor, how to connect that with the views down to our created stage, how to light that big a space, so it was definitely the most challenging thing we did last year, but it also one of those things, it was certainly the most rewarding, I think, because it's always, whenever you're attacking something that is a challenge, whenever you can realize it and you pull it off, it's just all the more satisfying.
Nice. Now, I imagine like being a series director is a bit different than being a cinematographer on a film set, just because there's five directors in each season. What was it like adapting to each of their styles?
It's that's one of the things I enjoy the most, because each director brings something a little different in terms of their intuition, their approach, and a certain bit of their style of like the way they direct, especially in the way they direct actors, but also like some of the choices they bring to the table in terms of style and shot making, right? But one of the things that I'm responsible for in our series is to maintain the cohesiveness of the look and the style that's already been established early on. So, that's where it's like I really, I've done a lot of movies in the past, and I certainly, love making movies. But the series is interesting because I feel like the cinematographer has, you're the thread that that runs throughout the show and tries to bring these different voices, artistic voices from the directors, into the world that we've already kind of created. And so I really enjoy that.
I love that, because as you were talking, I was thinking like, oh, okay, because you just sound like really like the common thread to bring it all together. That's neat.
Yeah, no, and that's one of the things that I think about shooting a series. That's the thing I've enjoyed the most. It is that collaboration and making it work, and to where it's like you're still watching the same show, even though there's 5 different directors throughout a season.
Okay. Now, I wanted to ask about the séance scene. Was like doing that, did you have to like do it visually like the theme of the show, like being more like a comedy, or were you able to explore a little bit more horror with something creepy like that?
Like, even though like this show is, I guess it's certainly billed as a comedy, this show is like very diverse in terms of like, there's a lot of scenes that are really, really serious, and they're heavy, and so it swings between those moments of deep drama, and then kind of like wildly broad, crazy comedy, right? And the seance scene was kind of, had a little bit of, but it started in one place and kind of ends in another, right? And so the way I've always approached the show is I don't shoot it like a comedy. I shoot it more like a drama. Especially in terms of shot making, and especially in lighting. So the seance, I will say, was another one that was heavily storyboarded and was quite challenging to realize. Certainly, with once things kind of ramp up, and like the magic starts happening and the lights go out, and I think there was also a storm happening at the same time. And then Emily ends up where she ends up with the character Nobody, which is a much different tone. That's one of the things that's like tracking that. Like emotionally through the characters, like it's that's one of the things you need to make sure that you're kind of getting right tone wise. And I think we did. That was a really fun sequence. It was very tedious, I will say, but it was, again, another fun one. Whenever we can kind of stretch ourselves and do some scenes that are outside the norm in terms of like just the normal kind of like family interactions, it's always cool.
Okay. Now you had mentioned like visualizing this as a drama instead of a comedy. Now, what would be the differences in approaching it as a drama and then approaching it visually as a comedy?
Well, I took my cues early on from this, obviously from reading the first couple of scripts, and then of course talking to David, the director of the first 2 episodes. And some of that was set out in those discussions, and especially, of course, with Elena Smith, the creator of the show. But to me, it's like whenever we're setting ourselves in a world where it's like it's very true. It's a lot of this is very true to history, and it's very authentic. Like when the production design, the costumes are very true to period and very accurate. Then I wanted to set the look of the show up in a place that also was embedded in a certain amount of realism. And one of the chief differences between comedy and drama. Also, I should say, it's like this show just is, again, it's just not just only a comedy. I think if this show was 100% comedy, if every scene was comedic, I would have probably have approached it a bit differently and made it a little brighter, and a little more open. And we would play, but the way we shoot this, we shoot it like a movie. We want it to be cinematic. I try to make the lighting for, in most places more leaning, more dramatic in terms of like to where it can be a little darker and richer. Because a lot of comedies sometimes when you definitely are playing that being true to the genre, they are a little flatter. They are a little more, say kind of like colorful, and you're using maybe wider lenses and shooting things in like, two shots and, kind of like looser, but this we approach more like, like a movie.
So, Tim Orr, thank you for chatting with me about the second season of Dickinson, and good luck shooting the third season.
Thanks so much.